Greetings and salutations. We are back. We are back. We are back. It's one question for every fight. It's UFC 287 fight week. It's Spencer Kyte, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, back here on the SevereMMA YouTube page, full of life, full of energy, full of excitement for this fight card down in Miami, Florida on Saturday, Miami-Dade Arena, headlined by the immediate rematch for the middleweight title between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya, a fight card with a number of prospects that I'm really excited about, a number of fights that I'm really curious to see how they play out. And so we're going to jump right into it as we always do here on One Question. From the main event, Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya. Can Izzy finally get one against Pereira? That's the question, right? That's the thing that hangs over this. For 3 fights now across 2 disciplines, Pereira is 3-0 against the style bender. For much of the last fight at UFC 281 in New York City at Madison Square Garden, Adesanya did everything right. He did everything well. At the end of the first round, he had Pereira hurt. If he has 30 more seconds, maybe that fight is finished. Through the next couple of rounds, he lost the second round because he ended up on bottom. He got taken down, and Pereira was able to have some success. But in the third and fourth, Izzy did well. He wrestled a little. He grappled a little. There was room for improvement, but he went into the 5th round up 3-1 on every scorecard. He was 5 minutes away from defending his title, from retaining his title, from getting a win against his rival. And Pereira came out and did what he had to do and what he's done against Izzy each time out, and that's get a victory. And for the second consecutive fight, he's earned a stoppage. Now, you want to argue about the stoppage? Fine. I'm here to have the conversation. I think it was a little early. I think it was a little hasty. It is what it is. You can't go back and change it. All we can do now is look at where we are and look at what's before us. And as much as there are all the different fundamental elements, all the different technical elements that go into this, and my guys, Eric Nixick and Elliot Marshall, did a great job breaking down the ins and outs and the different technical avenues that have to go into this fight for each guy to get a victory on the latest edition of the Coach Conversation over on the UFC website. The thing Elliot pointed out as sort of the X factor is exactly this: the fight gods, the karma gods. At a certain point, does it just feel like, man, I can't beat this dude? And by no means is he coming into this fight with the idea that he can't beat this dude. I spoke to him on Monday morning. He puts everything in the past. He does a very, very good job of compartmentalizing things, of setting the past behind it and moving on to the task at hand. He believes fully, completely, as he should and as he has to, that he can beat this man. But what happens in those moments if it starts going sideways? What happens in those moments if Alex Pereira lands one that tightens up your legs a little, that buckles your knees a little bit, and you get that little bit of, things get a little janky? That's the piece that interests me. Is there a point for Izzy where the doubt creeps in, or the I just can't get over this guy creeps in? I think we are going to see a very similar fight to what we saw last time out. I think Izzy's best path to victory is to come out, be a little more aggressive, move more, kind of fight similar to Corey Sandhagen against Chito Vera a couple of weeks ago. Don't let Alex Pereira get off much of his offense. Don't let him have opportunities to back you up. Be the guy coming forward constantly and landing and moving and feinting some takedowns and throwing some in and doing things like that. If he does, I think Izzy can win this fight kind of handily. But does that little doubt creep in? How much does that down 0-3 to this guy start rearing its head if you land the shot that should put him out, that would put anybody else out, or put anybody else in a position to be finished, and he just keeps marauding forward because he's 6'4" and built like a redwood? That's the piece of this that makes this fight so fascinating for all of us going into it. I cannot wait for this rematch. I'm not usually a huge fan of immediate rematches. I wrote a piece years ago now saying, let's just do away with them. We didn't have them all that much back in the past. Let's just do away with him. Let the champion defend against somebody else. Let the guy that was just vanquished go and get a win, show that they can keep going forward, whatever. This one I'm in on. This one, yeah, let's do this again. I want to see this. I'm excited. Co-main event, Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal. My question is, do people really still buy into Masvidal as a guy? I think the answer is no. I think anybody within the MMA community that understands this sport, that follows this sport closely, looks at Jorge Masvidal, understands that he is a personality, understands that he has a charisma and magnetism to him that not many of his contemporaries have. But I think we also look at him and go, this is a 37-year-old man that's lost his last 3 fights, was knocked out badly 2 fights back, and has landed his best punches outside of the octagon as of late. The really interesting thing here, and the part that makes me ask this question, is that it does feel that if Masvidal goes out and has a performance that, look, it's entirely possible. We've seen this guy resurrect his career, as he's talking about this week. In the past, he's done it. If he goes out and has that kind of performance, he could very well be next in line for a title shot, provided Leon Edwards holds on to the belt, because for some reason, 3-piece Minnesota still has currency to this day on April 4th, as I'm recording this, 2023, 4 years after the actual incident happened. I don't think we get there. I think this is a fight that Gilbert Burns wins rather handily. But I'm really interested to see, like, this event in some ways, isn't that the event is built around Masvidal, but he is the Miami guy, right? If you watch the first couple episodes of Embedded, it's about Masvidal in Miami. It's about welcome to my city, the 305, all of this stuff. He's going to get a big pop. And I'm just curious to know from you guys watching, listening, taking this in, do you still look at Gamebred as somebody that's a guy in this division, or is he a name that's holding a place right now? Move to the bantamweight division. Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez. My question is, can Font slow Yanez's ascent? So Rob Font comes in off a year layoff and on a 2-fight losing streak. I spoke to him for UFC.com earlier last month, put together a piece that's up now. I hope you go check it out. Really appreciative of Rob taking the time to share with me a lot of what went through his head during his fight with Chito Vera. He gets an opportunity here to do something similar to what his teammate Calvin Kattar did at the start of last year, and that's take a year off, come back and maybe have a great performance against the guy that has some momentum. Cal did it against Giga Chikadze. Rob gets the opportunity to do it against Yanez, who is 5-0 in the UFC. He's got 4 stoppages. He's got 5 bonuses. He's got all the momentum on his side. He feels like someone that a lot of people are expecting to win this fight and continue moving forward. He is, as of when I looked last weekend, the betting favorite in this, which feels a little bit suspect to me. And we'll get to that if that holds going into Friday. I can tell you I will most likely have a play on Rob Font for the picks and plays when IO gets back and we reconvene the team. But I'm really interested because I think this fight plays into the style of fight that Rob Font wants, where Rob Font thrives. I don't think Yanez has the same power potential as Chito Vera, which is what won Chito that fight, right? It has become sort of our totem of damage over volume, is the way Chito landed significantly fewer strikes. Rob set the record for most significant strikes landed and thrown in that fight, but clearly lost the fight because Chito was landing at a greater impact throughout. And I'm just really curious to see what improvements he makes from there, what lessons he learns from there, and if Yanez is ready to ascend to this level, if he's ready for this type of competition, right? So far, the best guy he's faced, the best guy he's beaten is Davey Grant. It was a close fight. Rob Font is significantly better than Davey Grant. So we're going to find out on Saturday, 1, if Rob Font is still a top 10 guy and ready to get back to that role. 2, if Adrian Yanez is ready to be a top 10 guy and ascend into that Shark Tank at bantamweight. It's a great fight. Super interested. Moving forward, back to the welterweight division, Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. My question here is, when are people going to stop pretending like Kevin Holland is something? So I will out myself, declare it clearly. I have not been in on Kevin Holland at all at any point, because I watched his fight on the Contender Series and saw someone who is not serious. If you're a fan of Succession, Logan Roy ended that episode on Sunday saying, "You are not serious people." Kevin Holland is not serious people to me. He's talented. He is skilled. He has upside, and he doesn't care about maximizing it. He cares more about being a personality and about playing to the crowd and having these little interactions with his opponents than going out and handling his business. We've seen that throughout, right? Every time we get excited about him, he has that run coming out of the pandemic where he wins 5 straight and people are saying this is the next guy. And he gets the opportunity to face a top 10 opponent in Derek Brunson, and he falls absolutely flat on his face. And a month later, he hustles back into the cage against Marvin Vettori, and he falls flat on his face. And now you can say Derek Brunson, Marvin Vettori, top 10 guys, Marvin Vettori, top 5 guy. Sure, I'll give you that. But we've seen serious people that want to be contenders, go out and beat Derek Brunson. We saw it in Jared Cannonier. We saw it from Dricus du Plessis very recently. So then Kevin Holland changes division and he gets a couple wins, going down and earning a couple of finishes, and people start getting that feeling again, that excitement about, oh, now he's in the right division and this is what it was. But it's just not. And look, I can throw away the fight and the loss to Khamzat Chimaev because that's short notice, it's changing divisions, and it's Chimaev. But he didn't look particularly great against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And if you want to say it's because he broke his hand, fine, but that's all part of it too. Is that this is a guy that just doesn't seem capable or interested to me of putting it all together. And now on Saturday, he's stepping in with a dude that is serious people. If there's one thing you can know for certain about Ponzinibbio, it is that from second one to the final horn, dude is going all out trying to finish you. We saw that in his last fight against Alex Morono, who looked great through 2 rounds until Ponzinibbio was like, shit, I got to get this guy out of here. Let me get after him and get him out of here. I'm not opposed to guys like Kevin Holland having a place in this division, in this ecosystem. There's absolutely room for them, and I welcome them. But I think we as analysts, we as people that look at this sport and speak about these athletes, to me, need to separate, need to draw that distinction between this is somebody that's a real contender and this is somebody that's a personality. Kevin Holland, to me, is more of a personality who is going to live in that second 15 at welterweight until he wants to be an actual contender. And I don't think he's ever going to get to the point where he decides, you know what, I really want to be a contender. Maybe he proves me wrong. Same rules as always. If I am wrong, I will be back here, mea culpa, on Tuesday on the takeaways. If he comes out and looks great and fights serious and is focused and runs through Ponzinibbio, you'll hear it from me on Tuesday when Harry and I sit down to do the takeaways. But I don't think I'm going to have to offer that apology. Opening fight of the main card, Raul Rojas Jr. against Christian Rodriguez. And my question here is, can Rodriguez capitalize on this opportunity? Because all of the attention is on Rojas Jr., understandably, right? Youngest fighter on the roster, only fighter on the roster under 20 years of age. He is 18, doesn't turn 19 until December. Got a good win in his debut against Jay Perrin, first round submission. I have said he is one of the top prospects on the roster. Stand by that. To me, he's the only person that has come out in the last bunch of years and done the like I'm going to beat John Jones's record thing that has a chance, and it's because he has 5 years to do it. But I think in any other fight, Christian Rodriguez is the guy that we were talking about as the young, talented, up-and-coming bantamweight. This is a guy that should have gotten a contract coming off of the Contender Series and didn't, because Dana wasn't overly impressed and said, look, you're young, you'll get some more experience, you'll get an opportunity. He got that on short notice up a division against Jonathan Pierce, who is now ranked in the top 15. And Christian Rodriguez fought him hard, fought him to a decision and won the third round. Gave Jonathan Pierce trouble, made Jonathan Pierce work, then drops back down to bantamweight, gets a first round submission win in his return to the division to get his first UFC win. And like, to me, he matches up well with Rojas in terms of where Rojas is strongest on the ground. Comes from a great team. Like, this is one of those moments to me where I understand why all the attention is over here on Rojas, but we need to not discount Christian Rodriguez as a good prospect as well. Move to the prelims, which close out in the middleweight division. Kelvin Gastelum against Chris Curtis. My question is simply, where is KG at right now? He's only 31, but he's one of those guys that feels like he's 35, 36. And I say that as somebody that's 44. He's 1-5 in his last 6. He's lost 2 straight. And while they're all against good competition, right, that run begins with the interim title loss to Israel Adesanya in just a terrific fight. He just doesn't look the part these days. Even in his win over Ian Heinisch, which hasn't aged well and is several years old now, he didn't look great. It was just an okay win against another guy that hadn't really gotten to that true contender point in the division. Injuries, damage have certainly taken a toll, and you can't roll those things back. And so this feels like one of those fights where I wouldn't be surprised if we see a good Kelvin Gastelum performance and he turns back the clock a little bit and beats Chris Curtis, because I think at their best, Kelvin Gastelum beats Chris Curtis. Just skill for skill, talent for talent, at their absolute apex skill level, absolute health, all of those things, Kelvin Gastelum is the better fighter. But is he the better fighter now? Because Curtis is durable, he's game, he's a veteran. We've seen him put out Joaquin Buckley last time. His one loss in the division is to Jack Hermanson, who's a very good fighter, who owns a win over Kelvin Gastelum, not doing MMA math, just stating the facts as they are. This isn't an easy test for KG. As I said, if he's 100% right, all the way back, all the way healthy, all the way dialed in, all of those things, he should win this fight. I just can't bank on that with someone that's 1-5 in their last 6, regardless of who it is that they've lost to. This is a case for me of I need to see it in order to believe it from Kelvin Gastelum. And I need to see it on Saturday before I can figure out where he fits in this division and what the future may look like for him going forward. Move to strawweight. Michelle Waterson Gomez versus Luana Pinheiro. And my question is, can Pinheiro become a contender at strawweight? So because of the lack of depth in the division, she's already ranked despite having just 2 appearances in the UFC, 2 wins, one of those by the illegal upkick, the DQ in her debut, the other against Sam Hughes, who fights earlier on this fight card, and we'll get to her in the opener. She was out all of last year. She blew out her knee out all of last year. She's 29 years old. She's a judoka, trains at Nova União with her boyfriend, UFC flyweight standout Matthias Nicolau. She's someone that I've been interested in from her appearance on the Contender Series. I liked what she did against Stephanie Frosto. That was a good win to me. It was a good performance. I like the athleticism. I like the base skill set. What I'm curious to see, and I think this fight helps to tell us, is whether she is somebody that is going to live in this 11 to 15 range, or whether she's somebody that can climb up further than that. Because Waterson Gomez is the benchmark. She's the gatekeeper to this. I know for a lot of years, people wanted her to be a contender. The UFC wanted her to be a contender. She desperately wanted to be mom champ, and it just never panned out. She's a little undersized for the division, a little overmatched against the best of this division. It is what it is. She's had a nice career. She's still solid and can very much win this fight, and maybe does win this fight on Saturday. But I want to see if Pinheiro is somebody that can come out now at 29 and take advantage of an opportunity against a name, but somebody who is 37 in Michelle Waterson Gomez, and get that victory and show me some stuff that not only makes me go, okay, this is a good win, but this is somebody we really need to pay attention to. This is somebody that I can see going forward and facing and maybe beating a Verna Jandiroba, or further up the line than that, a Mackenzie Dern, or someone in that range. We're not going to start talking about the absolute upper tier of the division yet because she's not there. But there's a shallowness to this division that a win over Waterson Gomez puts you in that top 10 mix where you're fighting an established name. And so I want to see if she can get there, because strawweight needs a few more people, right? The upper tier is established. It's the same names. We all know them. They've been trading the belt back and forth. They've been trading title shots back and forth. Can Pinheiro get into that next set of 5? Or is she destined, at least for right now, to stay in that lower third of the top 15? We move back to middleweight, Gerald Meerschaert versus Joe Pyfer. My question is, what have we got with Joe Pyfer? So clearly, he's going to get a chance because of the whole be Joe Pyfer thing, right? Episode 1 of last season on the Contender Series, Dana not overly impressed with everybody, but Joe Pyfer goes out and gets a win over Ozzy Diaz, who is at the time LFA champion. It's a good win. He knocks him out, and Dana raves about him, gives the whole be Joe Pyfer speech. Pyfer then shows up the next week at the pay-per-view, or I think later that week at the pay-per-view, almost called it a Pyfer-view, at the pay-per-view in a be Joe Pyfer shirt. We get the whole thing. He gets a layup in his debut against Alan Amedovski, does what he's supposed to do in that fight. But now he gets GM3, and GM3 is no joke, right? You get a guy that's had 50 fights, that has 35 wins, that has been in the UFC as long as Gerald has, and has had the success that he has had. This ain't easy. This ain't a layup. This ain't a Joe Pyfer's going to run through this dude. So we're going to find out. Here's your veteran test. Harry and I talk about the different types of fights all the time, right? And one of them is the veteran test. This is that test. And I'm really curious because on one hand, there are things to like about Joe Pyfer. He's 26. He's 10-2. One of them is the dislocated elbow against Dustin Stoltzfus, who, like, if that doesn't happen, who knows how that fight plays out? And maybe he's in the UFC ahead of time. He's working with a very good team with Daniel Gracie and that crew in Philly. So we'll see, right? You beat GM3, that tells me something. You beat Gerald, that tells me something. But if you go out and you can't get by him, that tells me a little something too. And it resets where you're at in this division. And it would reset some expectations and ideas about upside for Joe Pyfer going forward, at least for the time being. We move to heavyweight. Carl Williams tapping in for Chris Barnett against Chase Sherman. And my question here is, why are we still doing the Chase Sherman thing? Like, with all love and respect to the Vanilla Gorilla, what are we doing? This dude has shown us time and again that he cannot succeed at this level, that he's incapable of winning at this level. And yet he keeps getting rolled back out here. He's got one win since coming back to the promotion and getting a win over Ike Villanueva, which, like, was over Jared Vandera in a fight where Vandera had every opportunity to win that fight and just couldn't and didn't. And Chase Sherman managed to chase down a finish. It was the epitome of that heavyweight main card ugly fest we talk about on the preview show, and we lament on the preview show whenever they're booked. He went out and lost to Waldo Acosta-Cortez the next fight after that. And to me, that should have been enough. That was the point of, like, okay, we're done. We're cool. Thank you for coming back. We appreciate it. Enjoy the regional circuit. And yet here we are. Carl Williams, as I said, taps in for Chris Barnett. I think it is a winnable fight for Williams, who looked okay in his win over Łukasz Brzeski a couple of weeks back. I think he's able to out-wrestle, out-athlete, outpace Chase Sherman in this fight. That should probably mean the end of Chase Sherman's second tour of duty in the UFC. But at this point, I can't say that definitively, because it seems like the UFC likes to have him around. It seems like they like having this stable of not great heavyweights that can fill out main card slots and pay-per-view prelim openers. I don't know, man. There's got to be somebody else in the MMA world, some other prospect that can take this spot and fill that void, that has greater upside and greater potential, and just simply doesn't have the track record and the lack of success that Chase Sherman has already had. That's just me. Move back to strawweight. Cynthia Calvillo, speaking of moving back to strawweight, takes on Lupi Godinez. My question is, can Godinez get things moving in the right direction again? So obviously, because she trains out here, I'm a little more familiar with Lupi and a little more invested in just paying attention, like not from a bias standpoint. She's just somebody I've heard about. Her sisters wrestle at the college that's 15 minutes away from my house. I've interviewed her coach, their coaches on the wrestling team before. And one of them for a point in time was Arjun Singh Buller, who of course fought in the UFC and now is over and won. She's 29 years old. She's 8-3 overall, 3-3 in the UFC. One of those losses is short notice up a division against Luana Carolina. The other is a split decision loss to Jessica Panay in her promotional debut. And then most recently, she lost to Angie Hill, snapping a 2-fight winning streak. She's done well against fighters that have a similar level of competition or similar level of experience as she does. But when she's been in there with Panay and she's been in there with Angie Hill, she just hasn't been able to match that understanding of what you need to do and how to deploy your weapons. I think Lupi has a bunch of upside. I think she's somebody that can be a top 15 fighter in this division, if not a top 10 fighter in this division, because she's strong. The grappling is good. The striking needs to keep coming along. And Calvillo feels like a really good test here. She comes back to the division after losing her last 4 at flyweight. She's one of these athletes that is sneakily older than you remember. She's 35 or 36 already. And it hasn't gone well for her of late. Now, stylistically, this is a reasonable matchup for Calvillo, who is a very good grappler herself. And so we're going to get to see what level Lupi's grappling is at, where the strength is at against somebody that's coming back down and has been up at flyweight and so can handle herself physically in there. I think the upside's there. I'm rooting for her. I'm hopeful that there is upside. I appreciate somebody that wants to compete as often as she has and has made trips to go train with different people to learn and grow and expand. All those things are important. So I want to see if she can get moving in the right direction again, get back into the win column after that loss to Angie Hill, get the biggest win of her career, and set herself up, ideally, for an important and impactful 2023. Move to lightweight. Ignacio Bahamondes against Trey Ogden, who steps in for Nick Moda, who got a nasty cut on his head from a headbutt. Get well soon, Nick. My question is, where does Bahamondes fit in the lightweight division? So he'll be 26 in the summer. He's won his last 2, both by stoppage in the 3rd round. Clearly has some finishing skills. All the length in the world. He's one of the youngest fighters in the division, and he's a couple fights in already. So while some of these other young guys are 1 fight in, maybe 2 fights in, Bahamondes is in that same position. He's had 3 fights already. This is his 4th. And I'm just curious to see sort of who he fits near. So some of the other younger fighters in this division, and look, he's not in the Arman Tsarukyan class, right? Tsarukyan's 26, headlining again later this month against Renato Moicano, clearly a top 10 guy. We're leaving him out of the conversation. But is he closer to a Claudio Puelles, a Fares Zayem, guys that have had a few fights in the UFC and had some success? Or is it more in line with a Narulo Aliev or a Mike Figlak or an Ismail Bonfim, who beat Terrence McKinney last time out? That's sort of what I want to see here. Trey Ogden fills in, as I said, for Nick Moda. He's a veteran guy. This feels like a fight that on a full camp, Bahamondes should win. Now, Trey Ogden was supposed to fight 2 weeks back against Manuel Torres. That fight got pulled at the last minute, the day before the fight. So Trey Ogden should be in good shape, ready to go, all of those things. But Bahamondes feels like the guy that there's some upside. but I just don't know how much. Like, is he a legit prospect that we're going to see go forward and have some real success? Or is he a guy that just sort of tops out in the middle of the division? This isn't necessarily going to tell us a definitive answer to it, but it's going to give us some shading which way. It's going to let me know which way to shade that. I really want to see him against the more veteran guy soon. If he gets a win here and moves it to 3 straight, I think he needs to get that veteran test. He feels like a guy that is perfect for that Jim Miller test at some point. So let's see that at some point and figure out really and truly where this guy fits. Move to the featherweight division. Shailan Nurdenbecki against Steve Garcia. My question is, what's the ceiling for Nurdenbecki? And so first and foremost, we're going to throw out the last fight, the win over Derek Minner. That fight, because that was the last fight. We're just set that one aside. Don't want to talk about that one. Prior to that, it's 2 solid decision wins over TJ Brown and Sean Soriano. He's now training with Soriano at Kill Cliff FC. He's 28 years old. He has got loads of fights. He is one of these Chinese athletes that fought every 8 days in WLAF wars and whatever different promotions they had going on in China, where him, Rong Zhu, Mahashite, all these different dudes were racking up ridiculous numbers of fights that you can't really put a ton of stock in, because you're fighting every 7 days or 14 days against people with limited experience, same as you, and the records just don't really mean anything. But he's shown in these last couple of UFC appearances some good things. He can clearly grapple. The striking's workable and certainly going to improve and improving, working with the crew at Kill Cliff and Henry Hooft and Sean Soriano, as I mentioned. He's a guy where this fight, I should say, is one of those instances where if he's somebody to pay attention to, and I say this with all due respect, he should wreck Steve Garcia, who got smashed by Mahashite 2 fights back before smashing Chase Hooper last time out, which I was completely wrong on, and I own that. Apologies to Steve Garcia for getting that one way wrong. Again, if you come out and look great, I will apologize on Tuesday. But this feels like a spot where Nurdenbecki can show that he is really somebody that we should be keeping an eye on. Not that he's going to go on and be a championship contender, because at 28, you're not necessarily putting that run together when you're just now starting to put some success, put some wins together in the UFC. But he's somebody that may be able to move up into that middle of the pack group or into that second 15 as an upside. And I'm still always going to be interested in those guys, because that's where we start figuring out who's moving forward into the top 15 and who are the dark horses that are still coming. And so if he goes out and looks great on Saturday, we're going to need to pay attention to the Wolverine. Last one, main card opener, strawweight division, Jacqueline Amarin against Sam Hughes. My question is, how good can Amarin be in the UFC? So she is a 27-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, did well in the IBJJF World Championships and Nogi World Championships as she progressed through the belt system. She's done well in competition as a black belt as well. She's 6-0 in MMA, 6 first-round finishes, but she hasn't fought anybody. And if you know me, you know that I've done the math. So, opponents' combined record going into their fights with Amarin was 11-8-1. Since facing her, that same group of 6 opponents is 0-1. Only one of them has fought again. And so when I came up with this kind of why this is important to me a couple of years ago, it tells me whether you're fighting people that are actually fighters or not. And now some of it you can say, well, COVID, well, this, well, that, well, the other thing. It's been a long enough time for most of those athletes that she's beaten to have gotten back into the cage if they were MMA fighters, if they were people we needed to really, truly validate those victories. And it's not that I want to take it away from her. She has done what you're supposed to do against that level of competition, right? This is the thing we talk about all the time. It's one thing to beat overmatched competition, but when you do it dominantly, decisively, haven't seen a second round, that tells me a little something. That makes me pay attention beyond going, yeah, but you beat bums. It's why I love this fight. It's why I will be sitting across the hall here in the den for fight one, same as always, locked in, ready to go. Because I know what I'm getting in Sam Hughes. I'm getting a Fortis MMA representative who is tough, who is durable, who's feisty, who can do a little bit of everything, and will push Amarim. And we're going to find out right off the hop where she fits, because we haven't seen a lot of, competition jiu-jitsu fighters come in and do exceptionally well in the UFC. Mackenzie Dern has probably done the best off the top of my head, maybe even Gilbert Burns fighting on this card. But like Rodolfo Vieira has struggled at times, right? He's another guy that multiple-time world champion, hasn't really made that transition. And so we're going to see, is this run on the regional circuit, is this run through getting an LFA title and those things real and legitimate and meaningful and a harbinger of things to come for Amarim? Or is she beaten really overmatched competition and going to struggle now that she's here in the UFC? We'll start finding out on Saturday. That's it for this show. It's nice to be back. It's nice to have, I love the week off. It's nice to always get to press pause and regroup a little bit, but it's nice to be back. I miss being here with you folks. I will be here tomorrow with 10 things. Ian and I will be back on Friday with the picks and plays. I'm excited for that. We're doing well. Hoping to carry over the run of success as of late and keep things moving. Me, Harry, Ian, and Sean will be back with the preview show later in the week. Harry and I will then be back on Tuesday with the takeaways. Shawnee and Graham will have the big show over the weekend, recapping UFC 287. Bunch of stuff for me up on my Twitter, up on OSDB Sports on Friday, up on the UFC website right now. As always, thank you for watching. Appreciate you stopping by. Like us, subscribe, all of that stuff. It's the start of the month. Sign up for the Patreon, SevereMMA.com/pints. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Know that you're loved. Reach out if you need me. I'm here for you. We'll see you soon.